Rob, thank you very much for joining us today. I think for those Walsall fans who follow us quite closely on our social media pages will have seen that you have become almost affiliated with the club now. Just talk us through how your journey started with following Walsall.
Yeah, so I have a good friend of mine who's always been a huge football fan, English football, right? I'll differentiate that because we have American football. And I've really, over the years, as I've been friends with him, sort of grown into that. And I've tried to watch some of the MLS that we have here in the States, and it never really clicked with me or anything like that. I'll watch the World Cup when it comes around. I really get into that. Um, but he started following Walsall. And so I started watching the games with him. And I don't know, I was just very sort of captured by, this is seeing it at a distance, but very captured by the stadium and the fans and the level of play. It's different than what we have. I've been to MLS games here in the States, and it's different. And I don't know, something about it. Even the fans that I've interacted with on social in the very beginning, it was also very welcoming, you know. And I don't know, it just felt like a good fit, just like anything when you see, a good movie that clicks with you, or you read a good book that clicks with you, or you like a rock group or whatever. There was just something about it that really clicked with me, and I've been following the team ever since. I guess I started following the team the first game of this year. So yeah.
Yeah, that we have a real community feel here as a club, and it seems as though you've been welcomed into that quite nicely.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely comes across. It comes across when you're watching the matches, but again, it comes across as well when you're interacting with people over social. So.
They get under your skin, don't they, as a team then? When you start to watch them, you start to familiarise yourself with the players, the Saturday and Tuesday thing becomes something that you look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely, and the community as well. But yeah, like here on the East Coast, most of our sports that I watch will happen later in the day because they want to air them at a time where people on the West Coast, which is 3 hours behind, can see them as well. So like if you go to California, Sunday football starts at like 10 a.m. for you and you watch it with breakfast. For me, it doesn't start until 1 in the afternoon. So catching those Sadler's matches, which are usually on about 10 in the morning Eastern, it's a great way for me to in the morning to get into some sports before I get into college football or basketball or whatever else is going on.
So we'll talk about Warsaw, but let's talk about you. Talk us through what you do as well, Rob, that that fans may not see away from, you tweeting about Warsaw.
Yeah, so my job is I'm a writer. I write primarily comic books, but I do other things as well. Most probably known for writing stuff for DC Comics. I wrote Green Lantern for over 4 years. I'm working on Superman right now. I just did a Superman 78 story that came out earlier this year. It was really, really well received, and we're doing a second one of those. But I've also done my own things too. I did a book called Surrogates that was adapted into a film. I worked on the Flash, and some of my work from the Flash was used for the Flash TV show. So that's primarily what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And it's funny because I was at a convention in Detroit and I met two people who had come for this sort of big reunion for Superman 78, where they had myself and they had the artists there who worked on the comic book series, but they also had a lot of the actors from the original Christopher Reeve films. And this is a property, specifically that version of Superman, that really has a global fan base. And so there were people who came from all over the world to go to this reunion. And there were some people from Birmingham, England that were there. And I told them about Walsall, and they explained to me what Poundland was because I didn't know what Poundland was as a store. We had, yeah. So that's pretty much what I do during my day job. You know.
How does somebody get into that type of work, I suppose? Like, what were you uh, fixated with comic books as a youngster? Is that something you always wanted to get into?
No, I always wanted to be a writer. Even at a very young age, I was writing stories. 6, 7, 8 years old, but I never read comic books growing up at all. And it wasn't until I was in graduate school, uh, getting my degree in fiction writing, that a friend of mine that I worked with at a Borders Books and Music, which I think you had them in the UK, but they might have been called Chapters or something. They went by a different name. Um, but he, was always talking about comic books and finally convinced me to read some, and I really liked it. And I decided that's what I wanted to write, but I had no idea how to go about doing it. So I got my start by volunteering to work in the warehouse of a publisher, packing boxes for them and mailing out orders and talking to retailers and doing all those kinds of things. And I did that for quite a long time. 10 years. I worked for that company, moving up from the warehouse, still in the warehouse doing inventory stuff, growing into an editorial role and doing other things as well. Um, and it was that same company that bought my first book, The Surrogates, that ended up sort of having that success with the film, and that really kind of got my career started. But it was a great sort of blue collar way to have an entry into the industry and really learn it from the business side, and uh, know more about it than just being a writer, but understand, how books are produced, how they're wholesaled to retailers, really those sort of back end nuts and bolts of the industry that I think make me better as a writer because I understand the business from more than just the creative aspect of it. So um, I really did start out in the mailroom.
I was going to say that's almost a good thing for you then, that you've been able to see the full production line of what you now currently do.
Yeah. And just an understanding that, publishers aren't there just to, publish my genius or whatever, right? Like they have to make a profit. They have to keep the lights turned on. They have employees they have to pay and all those kinds of things. And I think just understanding the business from that side of it, I've worked in book retail when I was at Borders. I worked in publishing when I was at Top Shelf Productions, and I've also done creative. It just helps me with those conversations that I have with editors, and they can speak to me about publishing plans and sales goals and all those kinds of things. And it also helps me understand the value of helping them sell the book, going out to conventions and doing autographs, interacting with people on social, um, trying not to take myself too seriously, like I try to have a fun sort of open social platform, and I'll be self-deprecating, or I'll make these crazy videos that make me look, like an idiot or whatever, uh, just to try to have some fun with it and more of a community. My family growing up, my dad worked construction, my grandfather worked construction. The idea that I would go on one day and make a living doing that really kind of, so I never lose sight of that. It never gets old to me. It never becomes something that I take for granted, because every day that I'm able to do it and make up stories and have people pay me for that, it's a gift. And so I try to be that same way towards readers and fans as well.
That's one thing you mentioned earlier was the World Cup. You become,
Mhm,
engrossed in that. That's right around the corner now. How big
mhm.
is it in the US?
It's bigger than it used to be. I'll say that. I grew up in Florida. Florida was extremely American football driven. It's a warm weather climate. You can play football and baseball year round. I played a little bit of what we call soccer, in middle school, but it wasn't a huge sport. It has definitely grown. MLS has played a part in that. The World Cup has grown. Soccer as an idea has become very popular. A lot more, I would say, through the women's uh, U.S. team and the women's World Cup and things like that, and the men's aspect of it has sort of come behind that. But it does get grow every year, and I think it depends on what part of the country you're in. I was in New York City one year when the World Cup was going on, and every bar was this is where you're going to watch the Argentina game. This is where you're going to watch the, Mexico game. This is where you're going to watch the UK game, or the England game. So, it is definitely growing. I will be watching it. I'm a little bummed Italy's not in it because, I'll go for America. I'll also go for Italy. Italy's not in it this year. But you know, I'll probably be watching it at home, or I wonder if NoFo will have it on the screens over there. I think this will be the first World Cup since NoFo has been open. 'Cause it's a rather young. I think they opened in 2019. It might be that I catch some games over there too.
Because I know it's obviously massive over here for everybody, and it's a bit strange with it being a Winter World Cup, but it's one that everybody still seems to be looking forward to.
And it's interfering with the season to some extent too, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
so the Premier League and Championship has paused completely, but I don't think there's too many from League Two going. I still think there's a couple going, but I don't think there's as many as higher
mhm.
up. So League Two and League One might get that little bit more of a prime time now.
No, okay, yeah. Um, yeah, and aren't England and America like in the group
Yep,
stage together?
they are.
And
Yeah,
Wales too, right?
yeah. So
Uh,
it's quite big in regards to group
yeah.
stage football for us England fans as well. Really.
Yeah, a lot of rivalries in those early stages, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How does the timings work for you guys? Because I know obviously the first game for England is a 1 o'clock kickoff here in the UK. How does it work for the US?
It's gonna be all over the place. Yeah. I mean, we'll have to see. I don't even know what the time zones are in Qatar, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be all over the place. But that was the case also sometimes with the Olympics, right? And they'll re-air the stuff later in the day, and so you kind of just have to stay off social media. You know what I mean? And then you can still watch it on a delay and find out what's happening. But we'll try to catch as many games as we can, um, and see how it goes. It's also going to fall. It starts what, next week? Is that right?
Sunday, yes.
Yeah,
Just
so that's in the middle also of our Thanksgiving week
uh,
here in America. So there's a lot of holiday stuff that'll be going on, so that'll interfere as well. Um, but yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to catch the games. I just don't know if I'll be able to see them all live, but I'll be able to catch the games. One nice thing about working at home is you can have the TV on while you're doing it.
yeah.
So
A final question from me, Rob. I suppose we'll go back to where we started with Warsaw. Have any of the players really, are there any of them that you've really taken a shine to? Any favourite players, or do you just tend to focus on the team?
yeah, I think I'm just kind of, I don't know. I think it's just a team. You know what I mean? I've liked seeing a couple of the players get their first goal in their career. That's fun to watch. Um, Obviously, DJ scores a ton of goals. But I think it's just as a team. People do move around a lot. And it's something that I'm accustomed to. Like I really enjoy collegiate sports. Here in America, but it's only 4 years, and then the players move on to the pros and things like that. And so it's more of team identity than anything associated with specific players. So I would say it's carried over to the Sadlers in the same way.
Yeah, you mentioned scoring first goals. I think like we talk about like Liam Gordon, who has come back from that horrific injury. It's really good again just to see that everybody's got great team spirit here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting watching it from afar too, and trying to catch what some of the rivalries might be, between certain teams and things like that. I don't watch much of the other matches. I'll watch whoever Walsall's playing, but I don't go in and stream and do any of those kinds of things. I follow the standings and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it is fun to watch, and it's not often that you can sort of discover something new and get involved with it. So that's an exciting, entertaining part of it for me as well. Because I feel like I'm learning it for the first time, um, which in a lot of ways is what my career's been like too. I didn't really know a lot about the DC universe until I came in and started writing for them, and it's just this whole world of things that gets opened up to you. And so it's been a bit like that, and it's fun. It keeps you engaged, and it keeps you looking forward to the next match.
Well, let's hope we have a successful season for you to enjoy from afar.
That's all right. I mean, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I don't know if you know anything about American football, but they have not won a Super Bowl the entire time I've been alive. You know, I think they've only been to one, and they had a poor showing. Um, So it isn't always for me about the wins and losses. It's how does the team take the field, you know, the community support around them, even on their bad days. I think that's what says a lot about a group of players and a group of fans as well. And it's certainly the way that I try to be as a fan. I have nothing but the utmost respect for people who take the field and do things that I'm unable to do. So I try not to do a lot of that sort of armchair, coaching and you know, yelling at some guy in the Olympics because he didn't run fast enough when he runs 10 times faster than I do. That kind of thing. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to catch up with us, Rob, and we'll keep an eye out for your tweets on social media.
I appreciate it, Tom. Go Sadlers.